I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Henry Lloyd-Hughes, who plays Genek Kurc on the new Hulu limited series We Were the Lucky Ones, which you can currently stream on the network. Thank you so much for joining us. First question I have is, I'm curious. We were talking beforehand about how you have Jewish heritage, but you weren't raised with as a practicing Jew. And I'm curious as to what was it like to act in a Holocaust drama where most of, if not all, the actors involved were either Jews or had Jewish heritage in the background.
Well, I think it's amazing. I mean, first of all, I love this cast. You know, the cast of actors that I got to play a family with are, just some of my favorite people that I've ever met. And the connection that so many of the members of that cast have with this part of the world and this part of history. I mean, that's not the same as my history, but for them to be able to bring the extra layers of detail and kind of personal resonance and personal significance, I think was really, really special. But none of this, we wouldn't have been able to access those layers if Tommy hadn't have given us the time to do that, do the digging. You know what I mean? And to be able to sit there as castmates and talk about faith and talk about family and talk about traditions and the quirks that every family has when they do things in a slightly different way. I mean, that's always what's so interesting, is things get past, traditions get tweaked and customized in different parts of the world. And so, yeah, it just added to the richness. And also, I suppose for me personally, I was aware, as we all were, that we were playing real people. So the one layer of our own kind of personal family histories is blended with Georgia's rich tableau that she was able to bring to the table. And when I say bring to the table, I mean literally bring to the table letters, photographs, diary entries, the first-hand items. So I think that everyone's relation with faith is kind of personal, and Genek, throughout the course of the series, is one of his arcs. There are many arcs. Is almost a crisis of faith or a lack of faith, and perhaps finding something that wasn't there before. So it's all very interesting territory. But with Georgia's help, we were able to kind of, I suppose, connect these two strands of our personal, familial histories, and banking some of that stuff, and then digging down into her own family and thinking, okay, what is the best way of really making this family sing and feel completely coherent?
And so, I mean, you talked about how the way you got along with the actors, and it's an amazing chemistry that you have with them, especially especially with the actors that play your siblings. I think of that great moment in the first episode where you're all just basically like lounging together, gossiping in the bedroom before you all head off your separate way homes, and
Yeah, it's lovely.
You don't know it's going to be the last time you see some of them for several years. How did you go about gelling with the actors that played the other members of the Kurc family?
Well, I sent a picture of my suitcase before we got on the plane, and it had a tennis racket in it and two balls. And I said, just so you know, we're going to be playing tennis. And Lior Ashkenazi, who plays Saul, wonderful actor, wonderful man, said, I'm pretty sure this tennis game is never going to happen. He was the first to poo-poo it. But he was wrong to poo-poo it, because we played a hell of a lot of tennis. And I was successful in getting us all on the court, even greenhorns like Joey King, who claimed that she'd never hit a ball or racket in her life. Everyone was involved, and it was lovely. We were playing indoors in on clay, indoor clay, which is very strange combination. It's kind of hot and humid. It's like almost like Bikram yoga combined with tennis. But Georgia is fantastic at tennis, by the way. It doesn't get enough airtime on her bio, but she's an amazing player. And so it really was. It was family. It was full family. We would rent out often like 3 courts at a time, be playing doubles and blah blah blah. That's just one example of that was my bent. But
it's interesting.
There were dinners and board games and you know, the richness of rehearsal and you know, all the stuff that you would imagine would happen. But maybe the secret sauce was in the topspin and the slice backhand.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you brought that because I was talking to Robin a couple weeks ago, and she said that was the first thing she said. So, are you trying to take credit for getting it going in that direction?
Oh, 100%. I'm afraid it's not up for debate. I've got the receipts. You go back to the WhatsApps, and it's all there. So I can prove it. I can prove I was the first person to suggest it and the first person to find a court.
And Robin also said that she hosted some poker games. Did you play in those poker games as well?
Yeah, but I mean, let's be clear. Robin is a serious poker player. Like, you know, I'm not Nadal or Djokovic, but Robin is serious. She can really handle herself. But she was very generous in hosting these amazing soirees and explaining at length to a fool like me who doesn't really understand the game of poker. But yeah, it was terrific. It was terrific, you know, and frankly, all of these things that you can do to keep the connection between your castmates, keep this shorthand, keep this currency that you have, is so much. It's so much better than, you know, being on your phone in your hotel room, because I think all that currency hopefully ends up on screen.
Absolutely. And actually, I was also going to ask, with regard, you know, you have all this time with all the different cast members because it's such an ensemble piece. But was there any actor from the project that you wish you could have had more screen time with?
Yes, Logan. I mean, all of them. Because in many ways, the story is split into 8 episodes, but it's kind of like 8 different TV shows sometimes. Like, you know, Logan and I spent so much more time on the tennis court than we did on set together. But it's a crafty game that you're playing because, you know, you talk about that scene at the end of Passover in episode 1. Lior and I had 30 seconds, 60 seconds of screen time together in order to tell the fullness of a relationship between a father and his eldest son, and to tell it in a way that it's deep enough that you care about it for all the journeys that you go on. It's very delicate to get right, and I love that moment, and I'm so glad it's in there, even, you know, even with maybe a bit of improv from me. But there's you have to bed that stuff in, and you've got very little time to do it. And ditto barely had any screen time with Joey other than episode. Do you see what I mean? It's just like it's bookended with these moments, or at least, sorry, my plot line is bookended with these moments. And I was always pining to spend more time with my kind of siblings, as it were, because the bond was so close that I was missing them in real life, as well as the experience of being isolated and doing all the gulag stuff, which was its own transformative experience, you know.
No, that's actually what I was actually going to ask about next. Were those scenes that were set in Siberia, were those also shot in Romania? And
They was
how
yeah.
long did it take you to shoot that material, and how taxing was it to film that?
Yeah, it was taxing. It was really taxing, but I would say, without wanting to be uh, too much of a martyr, it was taxing in the right way because it was a bit of a schedule that really connected. You're no stranger to hearing how often things can be shot out of sequence, and you've got to pick something up months later, and blah blah blah. But they built this place. It wasn't in a studio. It was mm, far out in the countryside, and using a combination of pre-existing antique buildings, so buildings from that period. They then built what was essentially a kind of completely faithfully recreated Soviet era gulag. And it was 360. It was like, as far as the eye can see, like a whole huge working world. And as I said, the schedule was helpful because all of those scenes, by and large, were shot chronologically, which meant that there was an intensity to that period of work for me, that was physically challenging and mentally grueling, but in a way that I think was right for what we were trying to get across. The other thing that was helpful, of course, was that well, the days before we arrived at that set, there was a completely unexpected snowstorm. So they had set aside these like cannons or whatever. I don't know how it works, like these hoses of snow to try and cover it to make it look like Siberia. And then 2 days to go, and there's a huge whiteout. And by the way, it was as far as the eye can see, up to inches. So Tim Ives, the DOP, I mean, he was just like over the moon. And by the way, ripped up the shot list, and he was just like, "I'm going to put a camera here." And I remember that we had an hour left in the day, and they just deposited me. There's this bit where I'm going back and forth across the snow, and in the story, and they just deposited me in a field, like to 3 fields away, and set up the camera, and he said, "You're just going to walk towards this camera for 3 fields," because they wanted me as a dot on the horizon, just getting slightly closer to camera. And that's the kind of thing that you can do when it's like, suddenly we've got this landscape, we've got this huge um, set to play around in, and the snow came. We weren't expecting snow. Must have saved the production some money.
You brought up that these are real people that are being portrayed in this, and I'm curious as to, did you ever get a chance to meet or interact with any of the descendants of the
Yeah,
Kurc?
yeah, they were in Spain. They were in Spain once we were there for the last 2 months, and it was very profound. It's a completely different. It feels like a different sport. Being able to, I think I was doing the scene. I was doing the scene where I'm trying to get into the Polish army, but I'm convinced that they're turning people who are Jewish away at the front. So there's and we were filming in this old army barracks, and I remember sitting with George's relatives by the side of the set, and they were telling me things about Genek, very specific details about, oh, he was so generous, and I remember he went on this trip and he bought me this toy, and he would always, to have that level of connection, first-hand connection, a bit like, it's like the photos and the diary entries that I was talking before, but even closer, to look into the eyes of people that had looked at the real person, and now you're there in your costume, maybe resembling them somewhat. It's a very different feeling to putting on another costume and being someone that someone's made up. But I don't. People have asked before whether it was that added pressure. I don't think it felt pressure. I don't think it added pressure. And Tommy was very clever from the get-go in saying that all of you have the essence of who these characters are, you as people, as actors. So you don't need to feel any. We're just going to build from that point. You know what I mean? As in, you're already starting from a high base, and I felt that. So that when we were getting these bits of personal, very specific information from the real people or the real family, it felt like it was just an extra top coat of paint, I suppose.
And in addition to that, I mean, the look that each of you, the actors, bring to these characters is so striking. I'm curious as to what went into getting the look of Genek just right for you.
Yeah, it's hard. Also, I mean, I was aware that with the gulag stuff that his body needed to change to a certain degree. So Lisa was very clever and kind of, we made the clothes get bigger rather than me have to get dramatically smaller. And also, I think the overriding arc of, he's the most established in his career of the siblings. And I suppose something of a low-level local playboy. So we were keen, I think, to show him at his most polished best to begin with. So it gave us real mileage to just really break him down in that trajectory. Episode 3, let's take it all the way to, his face beaten up and he's in rags pretty much. And that was a conversation between Tommy and Lisa and Erica and the kind of ensemble of the creatives. So, but I think we wanted to have that, the polished lawyer, the guy that thinks that he can quit his job. It's not a big deal. He can get another one. He's incredibly qualified. He's incredibly talented. He knows everyone. He's kissed all the girls. Like this level of swagger. I think to give him that sheen was quite helpful. And I think Lisa did such an amazing job.
Well, Henry, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best over the next couple of weeks. And to all of our viewers, please like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to go to goldderby.com and make your Emmy predictions in advance of the nominations on July 17th. Thanks so much, Henry.
Thank you. Cheers.